2003 was a great year. Why? I don't know exactly, but people say that. W was in office, we didn't have smartphones, and the internet was practically unusable back then. None of those sound like good things. But Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho had a great match at WrestleMania, so that counts for something. There's also an animated Star Wars series on Cartoon Network called The Clone Wars. No, I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about this one. The one created by Genndy, the same guy who made Samurai Jack. I mean, he also made Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Lab, but I mean, let's be honest, this screams Samurai Jack. So for anyone who's unfamiliar with the timeline of Star Wars, between Episode 2 and Episode 3, and the prequels, there was a thing happening called the Clone Wars. It started around the middle, end of Episode 2 and wrapped up at some point in Episode 3. But like, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of it. And that was like the most interesting thing happening in the timeline of the prequels was the Clone Wars. Like, that was the big thing. Like, that was the whole reason for having Episode 2 was to set up the Clone Wars. And then Episode 3 was, like, to conclude the Clone Wars. But, like, we didn't really get to see what happened. Like, apparently a lot went down. But then in the movies, you didn't see anything. It was all off screen. Like, you have this awesome setup for an epic tale. So what do? You focus on the politics of it. I mean, I like politics, and I was bored by this. Like, do you remember the movie Project X? It was about a bunch of stupid teenage kids and young adults throwing this, like, crazy party. That's like making a two-part story. And it's like the first movie is like the frat boys and everyone, like, budgeting out the party, you know, sending out the invites, like, figuring everything out, like, you know, the boring stuff. After that movie ends, after the credits roll, that's when the party takes place. And then the next movie, the part 2, is the next morning after the party, and then it's just everyone cleaning up. Like, you don't actually get to see the party itself. Like, you might see, like, little glimpses of it, but, like, you don't actually get to see the party. You know, does that sound interesting? No, it doesn't, George Lucas. It's not interesting, Steven Spielberg. So Genndy made the prequel we all wanted in the form of an animated episodic television show. Of course, it wasn't the prequel that we all wanted in everyone's eyes, because, you know, people gotta go and have those pesky things called opinions. I'm sure there are gonna be people who say that the 3D animated version of The Clone Wars was a better show, but I don't know. I don't feel it. I wasn't into it as much. I like this one better. But why do I like this one better? Well, I'll give some reasons. There were a lot of action sequences that were just really awesome. You know, it looks so cool, the visual presentation and all the different ways that the Force was used. And you see a lot of similar techniques in visual storytelling and animated action that they use in Samurai Jack, and it actually translates really well over into the Star Wars universe. It's also really convenient that the Clone Wars were between the clones, which were all humanoids, and then the Jedi and all those people, like the Republic and all that, and they were going up against the Sith and the Empire, which, like, most of their armies were just all droids. It was all robots, so, like, the whole novelty of Samurai Jack being able to just brutally murder his enemies because they're all robots transferred over into this, because most of the enemies in this show were robots too, so they could just... And there are also, like, so many little visual and environmental things that just looked really cool. Like in the fight between Ventress and Anakin, there's that moment where it starts raining, and then the rain drops on their lightsabers, and it starts evaporating and sizzling on the blades. And I guess this isn't canon, because in Episode 2, when Obi-Wan went to face off with Jango Fett, and he pulled out his lightsaber and it was raining, this didn't happen, but still, like, for that scene, it was just a really cool little thing. But one of the main things that I really love this little series for is the fact that they got to develop a lot of the characters who in the movies didn't really get a whole lot of development. Like Count Dooku actually feels like he's significant. In the movies, you never really get the feeling that Count Dooku is that significant. Like, he's there and then he's gone. I mean, I guess he was kind of the main villain in Episode 2, but, like, most of the time he was either running away or just playing, like, general. Like, he was just like, you go over there and fight those guys, and you go do that. Like, he's like the boss. Like, he's not, like, in the trenches like, I'm a Sith Lord, like, fighting until, like, the very end. And, like, the biggest shining moment he had was just cutting off Anakin's hand. Like, that's like the highlight of, like, oh, this guy's a threat. And then he had a stalemate with Yoda, and it was like, okay, this guy means business. Like, maybe in the next movie he'll play a bigger role, but in the next movie Anakin just decapitates him in what feels like 10 minutes into the movie. But in the Clone Wars, Count Dooku actually had a pretty prominent role, and we actually get to see him, like, finding Ventress and, like, doing a little bit of a sparring thing with her where he's like, you share a lot of qualities with the Sith, but you are not a true Sith Lord unless you are completely fearless and he's kind of like mentoring her a little bit. And then he's also mentoring General Grievous and training with him. And General Grievous this is like his debut into the franchise. Like, this show aired between episode 2 and episode 3, and General Grievous wasn't in any movie beside episode 3, so this was where he debuted. This was where he was introduced to the world as General Grievous. And this is where we get to see him be the badass Jedi Slayer that he claims to be in episode 3. Like, he didn't get to do much in the movies, which is really sad because, like, I feel like General Grievous is probably the most beloved characters from a design standpoint. Like, he's iconic. Like, this dude has 4 arms and can wield 4 lightsabers at once. Like, that's like Darth Maul to the next level. But General Grievous, I feel like, didn't really get to reach his full potential, especially not in the movies. But in the Clone Wars, it was like if General Grievous shows up, oh geez, things are going bad for the good guys. Which is like, you gotta have a character like that. Like, that's what you want in an antagonist, is you want it to be like, if they're there, things are bad. And not in like a standpoint of like, oh, this show sucks now. It's like, oh geez, oh no, my favorite Jedi might get killed right now. Like, he was a legitimate threat. And we also got to see Mace Windu be a badass. Like, Mace Windu barely got to do anything in the movies. Felt like they really wanted to do stuff with him in the movies, but they just didn't have time to. Like, he killed Jango Fett, he disfigured Palpatine and then got thrown out a window by him. And when he wasn't doing that, he was just sitting next to Yoda and having a purple lightsaber like, look at me, I'm different. Look at me, I'm cool because I got a different color lightsaber than everyone else. No one else has a purple lightsaber, I'm the only one. And even Yoda kind of puts himself over a bit more in this series. Like, in the prequels, Yoda was mostly living off the hype of, in the original trilogy, he was like, ah yes, I was once a Jedi Master, I was one of the greatest. And then in the prequels, it's like, oh, we're gonna get to see him do that, and that's like, not really. But of course we gotta talk about Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, because like that's the main, they're like the main plot in Star Wars, at least with the prequels. And in this animated series, we don't really see Anakin and Obi-Wan interacting that much. It's mostly that student-teacher thing of like, oh, Anakin's off being reckless, being Anakin, and killing Ventress. Most of Anakin going off on his own was building up to, you know, we all know. So we actually got some pretty interesting stuff out of Anakin going off on his own and doing stuff and like having his own adventures. Because we start to see the development of Darth Vader. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan is being a general, and when he does interact with Anakin, it's usually him reprimanding him, being like, dog, like, I know you're good at being a Jedi and everything, but you're being a cocky asshole. Like, you gotta stop that. Like, it's a lot of Obi-Wan trying to get through to Anakin, being like, dude, like, your ego's a little out of check. Like, there's still things you need to learn. You're not willing... You're not doing yourself any favors right now by closing yourself off to not learning anything new. Like, they really kind of tried to push the idea that Anakin was in a mindset of, I'm already good enough, and no one... I don't need to work harder. It showed that Anakin desperately needed to be humbled, while also showing him develop into what would eventually become Darth Vader through his pride, and how that would eventually lead him to the dark side. So now we've gone through a lot of the things that I really like about this show. I'm gonna talk about like the one thing that I really can't stand about this.
Annie.
I don't think it's possible to give these two characters chemistry in any format. In the movies, it's like, okay, whatever. And now, like, in this show, it's like, okay, I can't think of any time where I saw Padme and Anakin and actually thought, like, man, couple goals. They're a really healthy relationship going there. You know, like, I definitely see why they're together. I see why Anakin broke the rules and broke his vow of celibacy to become a Jedi in order to be with this woman. There's no chemistry between them. And like, all the scenes where they're interacting are, like, my least favorite scenes. And Padme isn't even, like, a bad character in this. She's actually okay. Like, she has some moments when she's actually in the show. But just all the stuff between her and Anakin is just, like, this is awkward to watch. Man, I remember when I was a kid, Anakin used to be, like, my favorite character. And then I got older, and, like, now he's my least favorite character. Because, like, I realize how unlikable he is. Anyways, those were all my thoughts and feelings. What about yours? Tell us in the comments below. Tell us what you liked about this show, or the other show, or Star Wars in general. You know, go check out our Discord, check out our Amino app, Patreon, buy a shirt. I don't know what to say anymore. Dog, we should have a Yoda movie, honestly. There are plenty of movies they can do with the Star Wars universe that are like, you know, you can have a Yoda movie, you can probably have a Qui-Gon movie, because Qui-Gon was like, Qui-Gon was Qui-Gon was like one of the only good things to come out of episode 1. Like, we need a little bit more of him. Thank you for watching Let's Talk with Tom on the Roundtable, but Tom isn't just on the Roundtable. I have my own self-titled personal channel, I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Snapchat, I have all that good stuff. In fact, I even have a Tumblr. So, if you're interested in any of that, check that out, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!